There's a stretch of highway outside Lacombe, Louisiana, that locals won't drive after dark. Not because of potholes. Not because the parish hasn't repaired the guardrails since Katrina. They won't drive it because of what sits at mile marker 14, a rusted mailbox with no house behind it, standing at the edge of a cane field that hasn't been farmed in 30 years. And if you slow down long enough to look at it, and I mean really look, you'll see the flag is always up. Always, like someone is waiting on a letter they'll never receive. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I stopped. And I looked. And 3 days later, my sister called me from a payphone in a town that burned down in 1987. This is what happened. The Red State Horror presents an original horror story, The Hollow Road, Louisiana Bayou Country. Here we divided the story into 5 simple parts. Let's start from Part 1, The Drive. I'd been doing the Slidell to Covington run for about 6 years by then, hauling HVAC equipment for a supply company out of Metairie. Boring work, long hours. The kind of job where the radio becomes your closest friend because the silence gets too heavy otherwise. Route 190 was my usual. Fast, familiar, and lit well enough that deer were your only real problem. But that October, there was construction near the Pontchartrain Causeway approach, and the GPS pushed me south onto a back road I'd never used. A 2-lane strip called Tremaine Hollow Road, cut straight through sugarcane country like someone had drawn it with a ruler and then forgotten about it. No streetlights, no mile markers for the first stretch. Just a black ribbon of asphalt and the sound of dry cane rattling in the wind, like something was moving through it parallel to my truck. I wasn't scared. I want to be clear about that. I'm not the kind of man who spooks easily. I'd driven worse roads in worse conditions, and I had a thermos of coffee and 3 more hours before I needed to be home. Then my headlights caught the mailbox. It was planted right at the shoulder, white with rust bleeding down the seams like old wounds, the red flag raised straight up with no address numbers. No name, just that flag, stiff and certain, pointing at the sky. I slowed out of instinct. Habit, maybe. Something in your brain that says that doesn't fit before your conscious mind catches up. There was no house. No driveway. Just the mailbox, the cane field behind it, and a darkness that felt deeper than the rest of the dark around it. The way a shadow sometimes sits wrong, heavier than the light should allow. I drove on. I told myself it was nothing, somebody's forgotten property marker. A joke. Kids. But I looked in my rearview mirror, and the flag was still visible. Smaller now, shrinking with distance. And I could have sworn it turned. Not the wind. Turned, like it was watching me go. Part 2, mile marker 14. I didn't think about it for 2 days. Work has a way of filling your head with enough noise that the strange things sink down to the bottom. Below the invoices and the delivery schedules and the argument you had with your wife about the water bill. The mailbox became one of those images you carry around without knowing it, lodged somewhere behind your eyes, waiting. On the 3rd day, I took Tremaine Hollow Road again. I told myself it was a shortcut. The construction was still backed up. Practically speaking, it made sense. But I slowed down well before mile marker 14. Before I could even see the shoulder clearly, I had already eased off the gas. The mailbox was there. Flag up, same as before. This time I stopped completely, put the truck in park right there in the middle of that empty road, and sat with the engine running and the heater going, and the radio cutting in and out on a gospel station from somewhere north of Bogalusa. I rolled down my window. The cane field breathed. That's the only word for it. The stalks shifted and sighed in a way that felt coordinated, like lungs expanding. I got out. I don't know why. I've asked myself that question more times than I can count since that night, and I still don't have a clean answer. Maybe it was the kind of reckless curiosity that gets people in trouble in every story you've ever been told. Maybe I just needed to prove to myself that it was a mailbox and nothing more. I walked to it, put my hand on the rusted metal. The flag was warm, not sun warm, not residual heat from the day. It was body warm, the temperature of something living, something that had been recently touched. Inside the mailbox was a single envelope. No stamp, no postmark, no return address. My name was on the front. Part 3. The letter. I stood there on the shoulder of Tremaine Hollow Road for a long time before I opened it. My hands were steady. I remember being surprised by that. Surprised that my body wasn't reacting the way you'd expect, with no shaking and no cold sweat. Just a deep stillness, like the moment before a storm when the air pressure drops and every living thing goes quiet. The letter inside was 1 paragraph, handwritten in blue ink, the kind of careful cursive you don't see anymore, the kind they used to teach in schools before everything went digital. It said, "You've been carrying something that doesn't belong to you. Leave it at the crossroads before the frost. Don't be late. She's already waiting. That was it. Nothing else. I turned the envelope over 3 times, looking for something I'd missed. A name, a date, any detail that might make it make sense. There was nothing. I drove home. I didn't tell my wife. I put the letter in the glove box of my truck, and I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside, and I ate dinner, and I watched the news, and I went to bed. I did not sleep. At 2:17 in the morning, our landline rang. We still had a landline. An old habit, my wife's insistence. Something about reliability during hurricane season. I answered it. Static. Then a voice. Thin and distant. The way voices sound when a call is being routed through something old and overtaxed. My sister's voice. "You got the letter," she said. Not a question. My sister's name is Claire. She lives in Baton Rouge. She owns a cell phone and has never once called me on the landline. But what stopped my breath, what turned my blood to something cold and slow, was that Claire had been dead for 11 years. Before I tell you what she said, and what I found when I drove back to that crossroads, I want to ask you something real quick. If you've been watching Red State Horror for a while, you already know these aren't just stories. They come from the places between what people will say out loud and what they only whisper to each other after dark. If that's your kind of thing, hit subscribe. It's free, and it means you'll never miss what comes next. Now, back to mile marker 14. Part 4. What Claire said. She didn't sound like a ghost is supposed to sound. No echo. No reverb. No theatrical distance. The way movies make death seem. She sounded like herself. Like Claire at 32, the last age I knew her. Slightly impatient and always 2 steps ahead of the conversation. "Don't freak out," she said first. Which is the most Claire thing she could have possibly said. I didn't freak out. I sat down on the kitchen floor with the phone pressed to my ear, and I listened. She told me the mailbox wasn't the first one. They appear on roads like Tremaine Hollow in parishes across the South Street. Tammany, Tangipahoa, Washington, and St. Helena, always at the edge of a field, always with the flag up, and always warm to the touch. She said the people who find letters in them aren't chosen randomly. They're people who are carrying grief that has gone unfinished. Grief that has calcified into something else over the years. Something that doesn't belong in the living world. She said I needed to understand what I'd been carrying before I could leave it. I started to ask her what she meant. She told me to think about the last time I saw her. I didn't want to. 11 years, and I had gotten very good at not thinking about it. But I did. I let myself go back to that hospital room, and the argument we'd had, and the things I'd said in frustration and exhaustion, things I'd never had a chance to take back because she was gone by morning. "That's it," she said quietly. "That's what you're carrying." The line crackled. I could hear something behind her. Not static, but distance. The sound of somewhere very far away. "Go back before the frost," she said. "Leave the letter. Say what you should have said." Then the line was just a tone. No goodbye. No last word. She was gone again. Part 5. The Crossroads. The first frost that year was November 3rd. I drove out to Tremaine Hollow Road in the early morning, before the sun was fully up, before the world had quite committed to being awake. The cane had been cut since October. The fields were stubble and low mist, and the road looked even more desolate without the tall stalks flanking it. The mailbox was there. Flagged down this time, I stood in front of it for a long time. I said the things I should have said 11 years ago in that hospital room. I said them out loud to the mist and the stubble and the cold blue light of a Louisiana November morning. I said I was sorry. I said I was scared back then, and I took it out on her. I said I loved her in the clumsy way that brothers love sisters. Imperfectly, inconsistently, but completely. The frost was just beginning to form on the metal of the mailbox, thin white crystals spreading slowly like something growing. I opened it and put the letter inside. I lowered the flag. I drove home. I haven't been back to Tremaine Hollow Road since November 3rd. I checked on Google Maps once, satellite view. The field at mile marker 14 is there. The shoulder is there. No mailbox. I don't know what it was. I don't know if the letter was meant to be found, or if I was the only one who ever stopped, or if, somewhere in St. Helena or Tangipahoa or Washington Parish, other people got other letters with their names on them. Other pieces of grief that needed to be set down before they became something worse. I only know what I carried, and I know I don't carry it anymore. If you're on a back road somewhere in the South tonight, and you see a mailbox with the flag up, standing at the edge of a field that shouldn't be there, slow down. Look closer. It might just be a mailbox, or it might be addressed to you. This is Red State Horror. I'll see you next Thursday. Listen in the dark.